Hello, my name is Pastor Melissa Malcolm, and I serve at Emory United Methodist Church. And we are doing a Bible study based on, but not solely on, The Bad Girls of the Bible by Liz Curtis Higgs. We're using that as our jumping off point. And we're on the second chapter today. We're looking at Potiphar's wife. Potiphar's wife is in Genesis 39. And I'm not going to read that all for you now. You can always pause the video and go and read it in depth. But it's important that you know the story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife to enter this Bible study. But I do want to put it into context for you. You might want to go back and actually read about Joseph and how he was beloved by his father and his mother, the second wife, Rachel. He was the firstborn of Rachel, who waited a long time for a child. And he was preferred by his father. He was given a coat of many colors that many of us know about. And he had a dream about where they were binding sheaves in the field of wheat, and his brother's sheaves bowed down to his. And he told his brothers about that, which ticked his brothers off. He was already the favorite, and now he was saying they were supposed to bow down to him. And so it set the brothers off. They threw him in a pit, were going to kill him, but the oldest brother got them to sell him to slave traders instead. So in chapter 39 of Genesis, Joseph is a slave. He has been bought by Potiphar. He's been put in a place of power. He's been doing this for a long time. He is successful because God's hand is on him, and Potiphar knows that. And at this time, Potiphar's wife begins to make advances on Joseph, which he quickly defers. He does not, and this happens for quite some time. And so what we've been talking about here is who Joseph is and who Potiphar's wife is. I think it's very important. Many times we are only taught the male perspective of the story because many times we've heard it being taught by man, and the men identify with that story. But by leaving out the minor characters, we are missing some of the stories and some of the points that God is trying to get us to understand. So today in our Bible study, we focused on how do Joseph and Potiphar's wife interact with each other. How are they similar? How are they different? So to deepen our understanding of what God might want us to get. If we just look at Joseph's side of the story, we tend to focus on Joseph's obedience, his perseverance to temptation, the fact that he survives and goes on to be put in another position where he can serve and his family can come and find him. But I think it's important that we see the full story. So the first thing I ask our Bible study today is, how is Joseph described? And he is described in 39:6 as handsome in form and appearance. Well, his mother, who was the second daughter, was also described in chapter 29, verse 17. Rachel was beautiful of form and face. So it must have been an inherited trait. And we know in society then and now, if you are attractive, it gives you a leg up. I'm not saying you don't have to work hard or have a great attitude or all of those things as well to fully be successful. But often when you're attractive, people give you more of a benefit of the doubt. It is just like if you are tall as a man, you are noticed more. There's an expectation that you are stronger and a better leader. We see that all the way through the Word of God too. It's a tendency of our culture. So Joseph may have had better status because he was handsome and good looking. We know that Potiphar's wife probably was as well. He was a wealthy man. He could have chosen from many women. And so she probably was very beautiful, or at least considered herself beautiful, because it's obvious that she thinks she can entice Joseph. Whether it be with her power or with her good looks, she feels confident in that she will be able to attract and hold Joseph to her. So we saw that those two things were very similar. In our list, we also talked about the fact that they were similar in the fact that Joseph was a slave. He did not have control over his destiny. Only his owner did that. And so working to the best of his ability guaranteed more of his security, but his owner determined what he did, where he did it, if he lived or died. Potiphar's wife did have power but she did not have freedom the way we think of freedom today. If you were in a situation in a relationship today and the male in the situation was neglecting you, not paying attention to you, not treating you well, most women have the freedom to leave that relationship. Potiphar's wife would not have. She was considered property too, just in a way like Joseph was. So they were not as dissimilar as you think. They both had power in the household. Joseph was the leader of the household when Potiphar was not home. He commanded all of the servants in the household and took care of all the money and the buying. So he had power, just as Potiphar's wife had power. They were not equal powers, however. She had more sway than he did with Potiphar, I'm sure, because she was his wife. So they were similar in that way. And one other observation that was made in class today is they were probably both very lonely. Since Potiphar did not pay attention to his wife, and Joseph was a Hebrew, pretty much alone in Egypt, and was very obedient to God, he probably was not hanging out with a lot of Egyptians. He did not at the time have a wife that we know of. He was granted a wife later on. So they're probably both very lonely. So it would have made sense that they might have clung to each other, that they might have agreed to go into this relationship together. But that kind of ends the similarities between the two of them. Joseph had his identity in who he was. We don't know if Potiphar's wife really owned her own identity. Joseph also had his identity in who he was to God, he was God's beloved son. He had his faith to stand on. We don't believe Potiphar's wife had that. While Potiphar may have recognized that God's hand was on Joseph, it doesn't say that Potiphar himself was a believer. And knowing the culture, if Potiphar's wife did believe and have faith in anything, it was probably little g gods, idols. That was the common thing in Egypt. So she didn't have that faith to stand on. She didn't have that identity. We aren't even told her name because the men who told the story or wrote the story down did not think it was important. She was married. He was single. And then also there was the difference of Joseph appears to be very honest and trustworthy. Now, Potiphar's wife may have been in the past honest and trustworthy, but at this point in the story, she has decided her need, her desire, is more important than anything else. Her status makes her believe that she deserves or deserves whatever she wants. Unfortunately, status still to this day is a trap. If you have higher status, you can convince yourself that you deserve something, that you've earned something. And that is not true. We've seen that happen in all forms of status, whether you are a leader in the country, you're a politician, whether you're a leader of a school or a company, whether you're a church leader. You can think for some reason that you deserve something. And if you're not consulting with God about that, you may demand it, and demand it in a way that is not to glorify God. And we don't know if her status was her trap, that she thought she deserved this thing. We know that she was empty. She didn't have God inside her. And so she was searching for something, probably searching for love that she was not receiving from her husband. Joseph was obedient to God all the way through. He was obedient and says, I will not be disobedient to my owner, my master, or to my God. He did not believe that taking someone else's wife was a choice that he should make. It was a sin. Potiphar's wife didn't believe that. She was disobedient. Now, we don't know where her disobedience came from. We don't know if it came from a place of being angry at her husband or fearful that she wasn't desired. We don't know if it was a hurt that was inside her. But I will say to you, when you are hurt, when you are a hurt person, you tend to hurt other people. We just do that. We have pain inside of us, so that pain lashes out at others. And in this case, it lashed out at Joseph. When she was rejected by him, she reacted. Now, whether she reacted out of vengeance and anger, or whether she reacted out of fear that her husband may believe in Joseph more, I'm not sure. In Liz Curtis Higgs' example, modern example, she makes it where it is more of a vengeance thing. But it could have been a fear thing, because if in this book he's called Joe instead of Joseph. When Joe went back to the office and told her husband that he had been called to her house and she had tried to seduce him, her husband might have believed him. So we don't know if Potiphar's wife reacted out of hurt, out of rejection, out of fear. It doesn't really matter. She reacted in a hurt way, and she intended to hurt Joseph in this situation. We all can make wrong choices, no matter how good we are, if we are hurt. Sometimes we are carrying a hurt that we're not aware of. It's called trauma. Sometimes we have big traumas in our life where we've lost someone we love, we've lost a job. Who knows what it is? Maybe it's a tragic loss. Sometimes it's smaller things, like a broken relationship, a broken friendship. Someone we love has hurt us. Those can be traumas as well. And if we do not acknowledge them and pay attention to them, they can fester and they can separate us from God as well. So it's very important that we acknowledge these hurts in our lives, that we make sure we bring our worries and our hurts to God and let God help us heal them. Potiphar's wife had a disadvantage. They were not in a healthy relationship. Many people in our world are not in healthy marriage relationships. And the problem with that is evil forces can start whispering things to you, telling you deserve something, telling you you should look elsewhere because you're not receiving what you have. Maybe that's a message that we should get out of this story of Joseph and Potiphar's wife. In Proverbs 5, verses 1 through 6, many people believe, and Liz Curtis Higgs says this as well, that Proverbs 5 is giving an example of Potiphar's wife. It says, "My son, give attention to my wisdom, incline your ear to my understanding, that you may observe discretion, and your lips may reserve knowledge. For the lips of an adulteress drip honey, and smoother than oil is her speech. But in the end she is bitter as wormwood, sharp as a two-edged sword. Her feet go down to death, her steps take hold of Sheol. She does not ponder the path of life, her ways are unstable, she does not know it." In this case, the adulteress is the one that can distract the loyal man. But he is saying here, loyal man, don't go looking. Don't go looking for something else. This could easily be reversed. A man who feels like his wife is not paying attention to him, giving too much to her work or to her children, for example, may decide that he deserves something else and go wandering just as well. We need to make sure that God is in the center of our marriages. If we keep God in the center, Christ will draw us closer to him. And that will draw each of us closer to each other. And we won't have any reason to go wandering. So what can we learn from all of this? We can learn that we can all fall. We like to think in the book, sometimes I think it is inferring that Potiphar's wife is the evil one. But any one of us can make these mistakes. Any one of us who is hurting can make these mistakes, can look somewhere to refill us instead of looking to God. No one is all good, and anyone can be bad for a moment. We don't know if Potiphar's wife regretted her choice. We don't know. But God's hand was definitely on Joseph. And apparently he had a good enough relationship with Potiphar that Potiphar doubted his wife just enough. Because otherwise, Joseph would have died immediately. He would have been put to death. But instead, Potiphar put his slave in jail. He gave him a punishment from which he could eventually escape. So we don't know exactly what Potiphar believed. Maybe he did have some doubts. We don't know. But God's hand was on Joseph, and we appreciate that. But we sometimes do face temptation. We all do at different times. Will we persevere and search and look to God to help us out of the situation? because God always does give us a way out of any temptation. But are we diligent enough to look for it? Diligent enough to stay true to God and true to what we know is right? I hope as you dig into Potiphar's wife, as you look at this, you may find some other discoveries. Please feel free to share them with us. Put them in the comments. Call me, message me. I'd love to have the conversation. Our conversations are discussions. We can all learn from each other. God gives each of us insight into Scripture. And so we hope you will do that as well. As we leave today, I want to give you one other female to just look at. I would encourage you, anytime you're reading Bible stories, to look at all the minor characters to see if there's a different point of view. Maybe you identify more with the minor character than you do with the major character. Maybe you can see something deeper that God was wanting you to see if you dig in. So I encourage you to go back and look at Genesis 6. It talks about Noah's wife and his 3 daughters-in-law. They all got on the ark. They all probably helped build it and take care of all the animals. These men were brave to follow this crazy order from God. Remember, they'd never even seen rain at this point. All the water had come up from the ground. So they were doing a crazy thing. But we must remember that those women had to be special too. If they were nagging them and thinking they were crazy all the time, I don't think that ark would have gotten built. All 8 of them had to be pulling in the same direction. They had to have tremendous faith to do the mammoth task of building the ark, putting the animals on it, and restarting humanity. So I want you to pray over those women. What might they have been like? What would have liked to have been one of them? We just tend to think about Noah and the sons. So I encourage you, pray over the women in that story as well. I hope you'll join us again next week. Next week, we're talking about Lot's wife, which is the 3rd chapter in this book. But if you don't have the book, you can order it on Amazon if you'd like, or you can just study the Scripture. That's the main way that we are doing it. But Lot's wife will be our main story next week. But we're also going to look at Rebecca. We're trying to pick up some of those characters, women that Liz Curtis Higgs didn't have room for. So we're going to start with Lot's wife next week, and then we're going to talk about Rebecca. You can prep if you want to by reading the Scriptures. If not, just come join us next week, and you can read it with us at that time. I hope you have a blessed day, and if we can pray for you in any way or do anything for you, please let us know.